Hey, it's been a while. I wanted to talk about my Scrabble fiasco again. I will admit I don't really have any new news to report, nor a very clear vision of things that I want to say this particular time around. This is just sort of me wanting to get thoughts off my chest, and it may be a little bit rambly, and I apologize for that in advance, but I just kind of need to talk to sort out a lot of what's happened. And part of this, you may remember one of my recent videos, I talked about one of my readers on YouTube, Geigenzaehler, who made a comment a few YouTube videos back about how much he thought I was in the wrong and how much schadenfreude he was experiencing in watching me suffer, as I deserve to, according to him, and claiming that the Scrabble associations were totally in the right to do what they did to me. And he didn't really explain his position fully, he just gave one comment on that. But after I made another video in which I responded to him and talked about that a little bit, on a more recent video, The War on Truth, where I went into some detail about Lukman Omo-Owolabi's commentary about this, he did actually have a more extended conversation with me in the comments, this person, Geigenzaehler, and I learned a little bit more about his point of view. And I think we actually got somewhere in that conversation, not in terms of me winning him over to my side, but in terms of unpacking why he actually thinks the things he did and what his supposed justifications for it are. So just as a little bit of a refresher, I will remind you of the exact phrase that he said in his original comment to me, which was, "Hey, I read all of your blog and watched many of your YouTube videos and social media posts. I was directed to your blog by your one Reddit post. I just wanted to let you know that during reading, I found myself disagreeing with you throughout the majority. So let me remind you that views, hits, page visits are not generally by supporters of your cause. In my case, I just like to watch/read you spiraling and want to be updated with every ban loss that you are, in my opinion, deservedly facing." So I'm deservedly facing all of this stuff. And why am I deservedly facing it? Well, I'm not going to go over all the details because it's a much longer conversation the second time around, but I will, in the comments or the description of the video, link to the particular YouTube conversation we had in which he explains his position a little more, and I discuss him in some detail with him. And I do apologize in advance too. This is not my doing or his, but it does seem to me that YouTube sometimes puts the comments out of order, doesn't sort them very cleanly in terms of chronological order of when they were posted, so it may be hard to follow it, especially when I made a few comments in a row that responded to one of his. It may not be getting it in the exact order I put it originally. But hopefully it's somewhat readable, the discussion we had. And if I can just sort of summarize what his point of view is, I kind of tried to point out to him all the ways in which I was lying and that their evidence was extremely flawed and all these kinds of things. And he kept bringing in extraneous things about, for instance, my talking about Rosa Parks and things like that, which is basically saying he felt I was making a insulting comparison in terms of what I've gone through compared to what black civil rights leaders have gone through and stuff. And I tried to explain some of the differences there. But again, the fact that he was even harping on this shit tells me he doesn't have a real case. He's not actually focusing on the real facts of who is the bad guy, who are the good guy, who is the abuser and who was abused in my story. He's focusing on these extraneous details and how it compares to some other story in history. But when he did actually get into the details, it seemed like the thing that he was most interested in was my private conversations with Lola and the ways she depicted our conversations together and how he felt about me and how the rest of the Scrabble world must feel about me based on all the shit that she wrote. That is notwithstanding the fact that I literally caught Lola in hundreds of lies. She lied over and over again in her story. It is completely inaccurate. It is complete deception. And I have done nothing but tell the truth. And you don't have to take my word for that. All you have to do is read the freaking details and see the text messages and the emails I showed that just blatantly contradict many of the things she said. If we were dealing with a real rational court with people who thought rationally here, it would have been the case that anyone who tried to take me to court for doing anything based on the stuff that she had said, it would have been thrown out of court. she would have had no chance of possibly succeeding, because the courts would have ruled, people would have seen that she was an unreliable witness, that not a single fucking thing she said held any fucking legal weight because of how much she lied, how much she was caught in lies, and none of this was real evidence. It was the words of a liar. But Geigenzaehler didn't focus on that. He didn't talk about or address the fact that I caught her in millions of lies. He just focused on how he felt based on the ways in which she manipulated his emotions. And this is the fact of the matter, is that she did a good job of putting these lying words into print that hit a lot of emotional notes for him and for a lot of other people, so that they really do feel scared and hateful of me. And he thinks that the way people feel about me justifies them doing what they did. And it's all about feelings. It's not about facts. And furthermore, it's one of these things where it's like, I kind of summed it up at the end of the argument, said like, I am not responsible for her feelings. People can feel however they want about me, but if they can't actually put into a logical fucking argument that I actually did something that was against the fucking rules, that I actually did something that was against the law, then fuck you. I don't give a shit how you feel. You decided to interfere in my life. And let's not forget all of this. It's not like these people were just trying to defend themselves either. They were going all out to attack me. These people were part of another organization, WIGPO and COCO, two other organizations actually that I was not part of. And they launched this whole attack on me. They tried to get me banned from everywhere in Scrabble, including other organizations, and I wasn't even playing in their organizations, so the only way they could affect me was by banning me in other organizations that they were not part of. Lola played in this one NASPA tournament, this New Orleans tournament that I played in as well in 2022. But Jennifer and Evans and the rest of their whole gang weren't even playing in that tournament. And furthermore, I don't believe that Lola's even gone back and played in any more tournaments for NASPA since then. So she had a one-time thing of playing at this particular NASPA tournament, where, by the way, we interacted for a total of less than 15 minutes over the course of a 3-day tournament. And all of that interaction was very benign, as I fully explained in my documents where I told the true story of what actually happened between us, unlike her documents where she lied through her teeth about everything. And I want to be clear about that. There are a few tiny details of things that Lola said and things that Jennifer said that have some basis in reality. But that doesn't change the fact that literally every sentence they wrote, and every sentence Evans wrote too, was a lie. They lied completely and totally. And just because they spiced it up with a few kind of things that had a little bit of aura of truth to them doesn't change the fact that there's literally not a single sentence in anything they wrote that wasn't written to be designed to put a false story in people's heads, to get people to believe a false narrative about this whole thing. It was completely premeditated, it was completely intentional, and literally there is not a single fucking sentence any of them wrote that is anything but deception. And I have done nothing but tell the truth the entire time. And as I've actually made clearer as I've gone later on, I actually shielded them from some of the truth and didn't make it as bad for them as I could have in the beginning. When I wrote my original blogs in July of 2020, I gave a very watered down version of Jennifer's behavior in the story between us to not hurt her reputation as much as I could have, because I knew she had done much, much worse things than I was talking about. And it is only much later when I made my post called The Contrition, in which I actually gave old documents, first drafts of my stuff, and gave the full unadulterated story of how horrible a person Jennifer was from the beginning. And this is the thing, is anyone who actually saw the whole relationship between me and Jennifer, saw our whole history, if you had been a fly on the wall observing what had happened between us in our private lives for the couple of years before this all fell apart, anyone with half a brain, anyone with any sense of ethics would have loved me and hated Jennifer. I'm not a perfect person, but you know what? I am a really, really good person. And I know it's a little bit of a sort of, mental exercise. It's not totally based in reality, but if we imagine that we could order everybody in the human species in order of morality from least moral to most moral, that kind of thing, I am not saying I'm like the most moral best person in the world or anything, but I'm pretty fucking far up there. I think I am probably in the 90th percentile at least of morality when it comes to people. That is, out of like 9 out of every 10 people, I am probably better than them in terms of having lived a better life, having been a more honest and moral and good person. And Jennifer is in the bottom 1 percentile. She is literally one of the worst fucking humans I know. You take 100 people, and at least 99 of them are going to be more moral, good people than she is. But you know what? I tried to make peace. I tried to give her and Evans a way out, even after they'd been wronging me for a whole bunch of years when I started writing those blogs. I tried to actually make them look better than they deserved and to give them the opportunity to come back to me, have private conversations with me, and actually find a path out of this where I could have taken down some of the stuff in the blog. I could have rewritten it in a way to make them look better, and they could have actually made peace with me. And I've said this in some of my previous writings. They didn't owe me that. But if what they cared about was their own reputations within the Scrabble world, growing their Scrabble scene, then they should have recognized that opportunity and actually started having a dialogue with me and started treating me better, because that was the path to actually repairing their reputation. Instead, they did the exact opposite. They doubled down on their lies and abuse for years, and they just spewed complete and total bile and attacked me in horrible fucking ways that had no basis in truth, when in fact they had always been the much shittier people than I am. And Chris Lipe too. That's another thing about Chris. Chris is just a vile fucking human being. And he is an alleged rapist. I am not, okay? Jennifer made this claim about sexual coercion. And for one thing, she used the word sexual coercion in her first writing rather than sexual assault. Why? Because sexual coercion isn't actually a real thing. And she knew if she said something like sexual assault, she could possibly get in trouble for defaming me. She was just going to mince words and say stuff that sounded scary to people, set them off emotionally, but was just completely making up a story and trying to get people to hate me for no fucking reason. But then what happened, I pointed out, she had just pulled this out of the blue in 2022 and never said anything about it earlier. So she's like, oh, now I gotta go find some false evidence of something I wrote about someone else entirely and pretend it was about Dave to counter his story that I had never said this kind of thing about him before. So I'm gonna take this letter I sent to Jason Adolsky when I was talking about Sam Cantamonte, when I was talking about the man who raped me before I was married. I was talking about completely different fucking people, and I'm going to pretend it's about Dave. Oh, but I used the word sexual assault in there. So now I have to pretend that what I previously avoided calling sexual assault actually was sexual assault, and now I will label what I am accusing Dave of as sexual assault, which I did not do before. It's all just fucking playing with words, playing with your fucking minds. Anybody who is smart enough to read through the fucking details of all of this, if you go into this with the assumption from the beginning that I am telling the truth about everything and they are lying about everything, you will see everything makes sense. It is very fucking clear that they are behaving exactly like guilty people are who've been caught in their lies over and over again and just keep trying to cover their tracks and bury everything deeper in bullshit. That's also very, very true if you look at the fucking court documents. Everything about the court documents is about throwing bullshit in the face of the judge, in the face of the legal system, and just burying everything in tons of spurious paperwork so you wouldn't know where to look for the real shit that actually spelled out all their fucking wrongdoing. Just create confusion by inundating people with tons and tons of bullshit. That's everything they did. And everything I did in what I wrote to the Scrabble community, in what I wrote to the courts, in what I wrote as I follow up on this more and more and more, saying the exact same tune that I was singing from the very beginning. I have had the same story the whole time. I have never wavered from that story. I have been telling the truth the entire time. And in fact, when I have even later produced other documents that I'd written earlier, such as my 2021 blog post that I kept private to myself originally, the ostracism, and then this first draft of what had been the 2020 blog post that I put out there, everything I show you later that I wrote years earlier is also completely in concert with what I've been saying. is completely consistent with what I've been saying the entire time. Quite simply, if you look at this story from the point of view of Dave is a truth teller and these people are liars, everything checks out. If you look at it the other way around, saying, I like these people, I hate Dave, I'm going to make them the good guy no matter what, I'm going to make him the bad guy no matter what, you know what you need to keep doing? You need to keep piling on more and more mental distortion. You need to keep on piling more and more lies. You need to keep changing your story, changing your rationales, like, for instance, Ellie Dane Gore did. Give one completely different rationale than you were giving before because, oh, your old rationale has been disproven. There's going to be a new reason to support what you're saying. And that's the fact, is that you are doing exactly that, Geigenzaehler. You are just piling on more and more mental distortions to support your wrong, idiotic point of view because you believe the bad guys, because you like the bad guys better. And that's what it comes down to at the end. You don't like me. You've been set off a particular way emotionally by the stuff I've said or by the way stuff Lola said about me. It hit you a particular way emotionally. And you know what? I don't give a fuck that you don't like me. In fact, I like that you don't like me. But I think you're also just proving my point here, is that what it comes down to is you try to analyze stuff logically, you try to get to the details, you try to get to the end of why you are actually on their side and not on my side. And it's not about any legitimate case that the Scrabble Association had for banning me. It's about Lola, who was telling these lying stories about our private relationship, by the way, telling these lying stories 2 years after the fact, after we had no longer been dating and not been in contact for quite a while. She's completely distorting and lying about past events from a long fucking time ago, but it scared or upset you enough. It scared or upset people enough, and you're like, because of how we feel about how she painted this stuff from years ago, therefore, everyone is right to treat you that way. And then, you know what you even said in your last comment, Geigenzaehler? Dehumanization. That's what you did. You basically said that I am not normal. Let me find the exact quote here. But maybe you can understand that these kind of tirades are not normal and most people don't have them. Okay, so that is exactly dehumanization. That is, I don't like you, you're weird, you're too fucking angry, I'm okay with the world shitting on you and interfering with your life, taking away your ability to play in Scrabble tournaments because of how I fucking feel about you, and I'm going to pretend you are less than human so that I feel okay about it. Well, you know what? Fuck you too. I don't really fucking care. I never claimed to be normal. I am not neurotypical, I am neuro-extraordinary. I am one of the best Scrabble players in the world. And the reason I got here is because I am so capable of doing things with more objectivity than most human beings are. I am so capable of checking my ego at the door and seeing the world how it actually fucking is, not how I want it to be. And that's the thing. As much as I want to pick on you and tell you how full of shit you are, and believe me, you are full of shit, I actually am going to tell you something that's kind of the opposite now, which is that you're actually ahead of most people, Geigenzaehler. Despite the fact that you've got a completely wrong argument here and you've just basically proven how wrong you are, I respect the fact that you put yourself on the line. That you actually open yourself up to this conversation, you wrote all this shit down so that you can look back over your words, so other people can look back over your words. You held up your own thoughts for scrutiny. And that actually gives me some hope that you are more capable than a lot of people and actually going back and examining the lens through which you look at this stuff and actually improving your point of view and recognizing that you are full of shit. And this is the thing, man. I don't tolerate this dehumanization of me. Let's be really fucking clear. I am special. I am amazing in terms of how my mind works. And part of having that very powerful mind does lead me in certain ways to places that other people don't understand and can make certain communications difficult and certain misunderstandings happen. But it's all connected to how great a mind I have and how great I am at objective games like Scrabble. And I want to be really, really clear about this too. The way you're trying to say I'm so fucking crazy and angry, requires a lot of blindness to this real story, because the fact is that these people were mistreating me for years, and I had an amazing amount of self-control. In the face of all this terrible behavior for all these fucking years, I actually stayed calmer far, far, far longer than most people would have. There was a long period starting in 2017. Now, okay, at the end of 2016, going into 2017, when things were falling apart between me and Jennifer, and she was first going to this New Orleans tournament, I lost my shit in some ways that was not when we were together in the tournament room. It was just while I was by myself at home and was kind of emotionally strung out about the whole thing. At the same time, the ways in which I was strung out were not about trying to interfere with her and Evans or get involved or get in the way of their relationship. It was entirely about me knowing, as a Scrabble player, the thing that is most important to me is being able to go into a tournament and be calm, cool, and collected. And knowing that it was going to be very hard for me to do that going into that New Orleans tournament based on the previous interactions that Jennifer and I had had and what I thought was going on with her and Evans. And yeah, I was a nervous wreck. I conducted myself badly in those conversations. She was a nervous wreck too. It was a horrible time for both of us. But in the end, what I was trying to do by having a conversation before we got to the tournament was make sure that I could get there and play calmly, play my best Scrabble. That is what I care about. That is what I've cared about the whole time. And you know what? Despite how nastily some of my words came across in those emails and text messages, I managed to get over it and calm myself down before we got to that 2017 New Orleans tournament. And you know who lost their shit in the tournament rooms? Jennifer and Evans did. Jennifer to a lesser degree than Evans, but she was just like spastic and upset and really not doing well because she was so afraid I was going to make a scene when I wasn't trying to make a scene. I was just trying to protect myself. And then Evans was the one who actually started jumping up and down and yelling. And you can go back and listen to the recording that Jason Broersma made on one of my blog posts too if you want. He spells out how Evans was the one who behaved like a fuckhead in the tournament room, not me. How I didn't do anything wrong, he did. So that's just it. They're the ones who lost their fucking shit. I kept my cool, even then when it was at its worst. And you know what? That was still when it was worst for me, because by the next time I saw them a few months later, I was fine. I had completely gotten over all this stuff and was just living my life for years and years afterwards. But you know what? Evans only became more hateful. Evans only became more disgusting over time, more just showing it in his body language, his treatment and disrespect of me, and the ways in which he was constantly bad-mouthing me in dinners and other gatherings with the Scrabble players and all that. And I got lots of testimony to that if you look back at a lot of my documents of the ways in which these people were talking shit about me. And there was a considerable period where Jennifer wasn't even contributing to it as much, where it was just Evans bad-mouthing me for a long time. But eventually, Jennifer jumped on that bandwagon too, with the help of Lola. And then they all went fucking insane, off the fucking rails, trying to get me eliminated from the Scrabble world based on a completely distorted perception of me because of the way they've been gossiping with each other for so fucking long and gossiping with their friends and just letting themselves go on this freight train of belief and feeling that had nothing to do with me when I wasn't even in their fucking lives, and I was still staying calm. I was often upset when I was by myself, when I was at home, not so much because of them, but because of other people, like when David Eldar attacked me online, like some of our other mutual friends, when they were clearly treating me in ways that were askance and just avoiding me and not talking to me. But in general, I was just letting this all wash off my back for years. And then, even when I finally decided this is enough, I need to speak up about this when I wrote the 2020 blog. And let's be clear, I did that because things kept getting worse with other people, because they kept escalating by separating off from NASPA and creating their own Coco organization, and because this stuff was affecting the rest of my life emotionally, getting me to such an upset and irritated point that I couldn't continue even doing my job well enough. I was so irritated, I was so upset mentally, it actually led to worse performance in my jobs. It led to worse interactions with other people around me because I was on edge all the time. And all of this stuff was hurting me so bad. So what did I do? I wrote up this 2020 blog. And the way I wrote it, the original version was 120 pages long, and it was like, you've seen the first selection of that in that little document that I shared recently about the contrition, in which I told the full story of what happened between me and Jennifer in our dating relationship. But that was only the first 11 pages of a 120-page document. That was me pouring my fucking emotion out and just saying all the things with no regard for what was sensitive or careful to get out there of how much it would hurt other people, but just dumping all my feelings because of how much that hurt. And then you know what a lot of other people would have done in that situation? They would have just published that whole 120-page thing and said, God be damned, whoever is hurt by this, whatever, I'm just putting it fucking out there. What did I do? I spent the next several months editing that shit down. I edited it down from what was a 120-page document to probably about 40 pages or less in terms of what ended up going into those first 2 blog posts. I got a bunch of other people in my Scrabble community to read it, to help me edit it, to edit a lot of the emotion out, to make sure that what I was saying was in the public interest of the Scrabble community. And there were many people who thought that it was in the interest of the Scrabble community. Why? Because the Clinchies and Chris Light were cheating at the fucking game. Because the way they were using their registration systems before Coco separated, when they were running NASPA tournaments, actually broke NASPA rules, and they were giving a whole lot of favoritism to their friends. And then they were trying to undermine the Scrabble associations and poach their directors in tournaments after that when they made a separate organization. They did a whole lot of shitty, unethical stuff that made for an unlevel playing field. And I want to have you know, even before it got to the point of doing all this kind of shitty, unethical stuff that way, this was always how Jennifer was. Jennifer was always a really exclusive, cliquish dick. Okay? She was somebody who just very quickly picked who she liked, who she didn't like, and just said, if you were on the outs, you're not part of her crew, you're not going to get invited to shit, you're one of the people who's not one of the chosen few. And I can tell you a few specific names. When I first met her, I started taking her to New Orleans tournaments and some other Scrabble tournaments, and she met many of the other people I knew from Scrabble. One of the people she immediately did not like was Michael L. Diary. She thought he was crude or crass or a little bit too, I don't know, creepy in some of the ways he was. So she decided he was someone she did not like and she did not want to hang out with, and she would not have been inviting to any of her private events or parties or anything like that. When we went to Australia, we interacted with a number of other Scrabble players, among those some of the top Australian players, including Ed Oculitz, who was in Sydney, and Naween Fernando, who was in Melbourne. Actually, we stayed at Naween's place for a night or two. And you know what? For whatever reason, Jennifer decided very quickly that she liked Ed and she didn't like Naween, and that Ed would be somebody who was a friend who they would reach out to when they were running some of their international events online during COVID, who was part of the selected group. Naween was someone she didn't like. So maybe it hasn't affected you, Naween, as much because they're not as connected to Australian Scrabble, but guess what? If Evans and Jennifer were in your backyard, you wouldn't have been invited to shit and Ed would have, because she liked Ed, she didn't like you, because that's who Jennifer is in a nutshell. She's somebody who just picks who she likes, who she doesn't like very, very quickly, and then tries to set everything up so that she only does stuff with the people she likes and says, fuck you to the rest of you. And you know what? I can appreciate that elitism, and I don't even judge it. I'm kind of elitist too in that way at times. I do have my own friends, the people I like, the people I don't want to hang out with, and that's fine. Socially, we're all allowed to do that. Jennifer Evans can run whatever fucking private parties they want for the friends they like and not invite other people. But there is a massive, massive difference between private parties and rated Scrabble tournaments. And this is why what they've done is so fucking wrong, but the majority of people who are not deep in the game scene, who are not competitive sports and games players like this, just don't fucking get it. You all make this false comparison to your social situations, and you think about situations where there's some guy in your life or somebody you don't like who just won't go away, and you're like, I should be able to have my social life in peace. Yes, you absolutely should have to be able to have your social life in peace. But we're not talking about your social life here. We're talking about the tournament Scrabble community. We're talking about a community that needs to be united, where everybody who plays by the rules, plays the game the right way, isn't a fucking cheater, and is actually good at the game, should be able to play in the tournaments. And if you're going to start picking your favorites and say, I like these people, I don't like these people, I'm only going to play Scrabble with these people and not with these other people, and just start being exclusionary like that, you're going to fucking kill off the scene. And let's be really, really clear about that. Our scene is dying, it is in bad shape, and that's not just because of my story. Even if the stuff between me and them hadn't happened. The Scrabble scene was extremely fragmented. I've talked in my Drunk History of Scrabble video about how we eventually got to a point of having 6 different English language Scrabble dictionaries because people can't fucking get along and agree with a single set of rules. There's so many ways that we're divided. There's no money in the game, there's no prestige in the game, and it only gets worse the more and more fractured we get. And also, let's really be clear about this. A big part of the reason we're so divided is because John Chu and Chris Cree are terrible leaders, and they drove a lot of this shit into the ground. Now, it's not entirely their fault. There was a lot less money in the game. There was a lot of corporate divestment when the old NSA ceased to exist and NASPA got into the game. But they certainly didn't help matters and only led to things being more fractured. Among the evidence for that is the fact that WIGPO got started in the first place, even before Coco did, and then Coco later. You had these 2 rival organizations that started about a decade apart, both times because of a lot of dissatisfaction with the way NASPA was handling the show. Another thing, Stefan Fatsis, the guy who wrote Word Freak, the guy who has been the biggest connection in terms of press, in terms of media coverage of Scrabble, in terms of all that. John Chu, I got something to tell you. Back before I got alienated from all of you, and I hadn't seen you much, just in private conversations with Stefan Fatsis, I learned from him that he didn't like you very much. He thought you were a fucking asshole. So that's it. In addition to all the other ways you've alienated Scrabble community and you've caused these renegade associations to pop up, the guy who has the most influence in the world in terms of Scrabble media coverage doesn't like you very much, thinks you're a fucking dick. So you know what, John Chu, you are a dick. You are a negative for Scrabble. Yes, you've done some good things in the past. Yes, you've made some good software. But you know what? You're pretty fucking bad with people, and we need to get you out of power with Scrabble. And that all has nothing to do with what happened to me. But you know what? What you did to me is even fucking worse. And I've written to you this before. I've explained to you. What you did to me wasn't just obnoxious. It was a fucking moral sin. You knew that the whole story about me was false, and you decided you were going to double down on the lies of other people and go along with it because you thought they had the fucking freight train of influence, and it was more important to please the most people than to do what was true. You're willing to live the lie that fucking impugns my name. Well, fuck you, John Chu. So anyway, you're all a bunch of dicks, but I also want to be clear, part of the reason I haven't been able to get this story as widely promoted and get articles written about it out there as I can is because you've done such a lousy job and driven the scene into the ground. If the scene was better organized, if it had the money in it that a chess or poker game or something like that did, there would have been articles out about my story by now. And a big part of the reason why I haven't been able to get stuff out there is because nobody gives a fuck about Scrabble because you've all been running that game into the fucking ground for the last many years. And this is the fucking fact. You may not like me, but I am smarter than you at this game. I'm also smarter than you at organizing this fucking game. And I made that clear in my Drunk History of Scrabble video. It was fucking obvious to me from day one when I read Word Freak and learned about the history of this that the US had done the wrong fucking thing by even allowing the official tournament word list to be created, that we should have just gone with the corporations and let them take the dirty words out the first time. And I explained the rationale for it in that video, and unfortunately I wasn't involved in the Scrabble scene at the time, and even if I was, I might not have been able to change enough minds. But you know what? I knew better than you what we needed to do to run the fucking game right and be in concert with the corporations. And you know what? There was a time when I could have said this nicely to you, when I could have been more persuasive to you, but my patience is done. You've insulted me enough. You've dragged my name through the mud because of your political fights that are about your bullshit that no one else cares about while you continue to tear this scene up. And I say fuck you to all of you right now because I want to build a better tournament scene. I want to build a better tournament scene that's united by the dictionary, one dictionary across the world that has more prize money in it, has more corporate investment, and has more people who are really fucking good at the game. And you know what? When it actually gets there, if it gets there, if I can get my way and get some power, the vast majority of the scene isn't going to be you people. It's going to be a whole new set of people who are much more talented and smart than you are, you dumb fucks. And the big part of the reason why we're in such bad shape is because the dumb fucks like you are way too big a percentage of the population. And I get that I'm not going to win people over by talking to you like this. I'm not trying to win you over. I'm saying you've disrespected me enough, and now you're going to get disrespected for the rest of your fucking lives, motherfuckers. Okay? I am fucking sick of your shit. I am going to keep shitting all over your legacies as much as I fucking can. And I want you to know the only way you will ever end this is to start getting your way into my good graces by aligning yourself with the truth rather than your fucking opinions of how much you hate me. And you know what? I keep being hateable to you because I want you to suffer. I want you to know the fucking agony of this person you hate is this much smarter than you, has the right answers, knows how to play the game better, sees everything more clearly and honestly than you do, and you are a fucking lying shitbags who have to make me the bad guy, and you're going to keep going down the path of being the lying, immoral shitbags you are as long as you keep hating me. You got to swallow your fucking pride and say, you know what? Even though I hate Dave, he is right. He's smarter than we are. He knows what the fuck he's doing. He's told the truth the entire fucking time. Jennifer and Chris Lipe are lying sacks of human shit, and the more we take their side, the more we are going down the fucking tubes. But you know what? I don't have a whole lot of faith that's going to change because we're seeing the same fucking thing with Trumpism. We're seeing the same thing with so many conservative movements these days. It is the same fucking thing. People decide their loyalty to other people is more important than the truth, and they will continue to do more and more mental distortions and more ridiculous justifications just because I hate that person. I cannot stomach the idea that he's right. I'm going to argue against it. I'm going to not let it be the case in my fucking head no matter what. Because I can't have the person I hate being that much smarter and that much more right than me. Well, fuck you, I am right, and you're going to continue to be fucking idiots as long as you disagree with me. But I also want to be clear on one more thing here. I want to go talk about my story with my mother. Because I spelled it out if you go back and watch the video about my mom and her ways in which she was complicit with my child abuse. And I think I explained it pretty well in that video. It might be worth watching and going back there. There were so many ways that my mother mishandled the situation, allowed horrible abusive things to happen right in fucking front of her, and never spoke up and never did anything about it and normalized it in a lot of ways. At the same time, I didn't really need all that from her. I eventually became the person who was strong enough at 18 years of age to throw my abuser out of the house myself, to save my mother and my sisters and myself from this guy and start building a new reality where he was not in our home and where we could have a safe home again. And there were bumps along the way. My mom undermined it temporarily by getting rid of that restraining order, but in the long run, we eventually did get him out of our lives entirely. And you know what? After we had him out of our lives entirely, I still managed to go on and try to be a loving son to my mom. Yeah, the relationship was strained a little bit, but you know what? I was still going to holidays, I was still part of the family, and I still probably would have helped her into her old age and taken care of her in a lot of ways and tried to be a good son despite whatever problems there were there. And I never needed any recognition from her. I never needed any acknowledgement that the shit had happened, that she hadn't handled it well or anything like that. I was not asking for any kind of apology. The one thing I needed from her was not to fucking lie about it. Was not to actually build an alternate reality and start creating justifications and creating a false fucking story to undermine the story of the ways in which she had actually been part of my abuse and the ways in which she really started making this false story to try to put the blame on a kid who was 11 years old at the time when this whole fucking thing started. And that's what she did in our conversation on the phone in January 2022. She started blatantly lying to me, writing this false fucking story to protect her own ego and making the kid the bad guy and dismissing herself and the abuser in her house from the horrible things they actually fucking did. And that was when it was too much. When she said, I'm going to start fucking telling lies, I'm going to start painting the story a particular way to not make myself the bad guy and to make you the bad guy, to actually pile on more to the victim who already suffered this fucking abuse, that is when I said enough. That is not only when I ended up kicking her out of my life and saying I'm not her son anymore, she's not my mother, I'm severing that relationship, is when I eventually got to the point of I'm going to record a fucking YouTube video and show this to the whole fucking world. So now not only does she lose her son forever, now she gets the embarrassment of being out there for anyone in the world to see what a complete fuckhead she was in telling these fucking lies, in not being able to accept the truth. And you know what? If I do that to my mother, the person who brought me onto the planet, the person I most loved for a long time in the past, if I'm able to completely sever that relationship and say that, you should be aware, that is the third fucking rail for me. I don't care how much you all abuse me. You can keep on doing whatever you want. You know, there's one thing that Geigenzaehler said that's actually correct here, if I look back at this at all. He said, they're abiding by the organization's terms and their board's decision. That's how private organizations operate. That's their right. It's absolutely right. As private organizations, things like NASPA can choose to keep me out for whatever fucking reason they want. But there's a balance here. They can keep me out no matter how unreasonable the justifications are. But if they're trying to paint themselves as a professional sporting organization, if they're trying to paint themselves as the official organization of Scrabble in North America and actually uphold what is good about the game and have legitimacy, then it's hard to do that while they're saying we are just excluding people we don't like on a completely ridiculous basis. And that's what I fucking hate. John Chu, if you want to keep me out forever, fine. You just have to make public fucking statements about what an abusive fuckhead you are, about how you took the lies of the Clintons and pretended they were true to slander my name further so that you could keep me out because they were more popular than I was. I was losing the popularity contest. They were winning it. And the way you thought you'd get the most people in Scrabble for your tournaments was to take the side of these evil lying fuckheads and to continue to shit on the reputation of a person who'd already been horribly defamed. That's what I want to hear from you. Keep me out all you want, but you don't get to live a fucking lie. And that's the same thing for you, Lukeman. You don't get to live a fucking lie. You are a massive fucking hypocrite who said all this stuff about transparency and professionalism, and now you've proven that you're just a massive fucking shithead who is not going to side with me because I've made too many fucking enemies in this community. Why? Because all these people abused me for fucking years while I was perfect, and then I finally lost it, and I'm not going to be polite anymore to all of you fuckers who've been abusing me for this fucking long. So keep me out of whatever you want, but you get the real story out there. Everyone sees what immoral fucks you are being. You don't get to write any false narratives about how you're treating me, you immoral fuckheads. And you will continue to be immoral fuckheads for the rest of your life until you start treating me right. Until you start telling the real story of how Dave told the truth about everything, how the Clinchies and Chris Lipe lied about everything, how Chris Lipe actually has a much more credible threat allegation that he is a rapist. And not only that, but he literally told Limo in our meeting at Accra, after I'd already given all the proof on my YouTube videos that Jennifer was lying about the sexual assault case and that I had evidence from the court, request for admission, that made clear she was fucking lying about that, Chris himself told Limo that I'd been accused of sexual assault by Jennifer. Why? Because he knew that the truth was about to come out from me about how he had sexually assaulted someone, how he had raped someone allegedly. And this is the fucking thing, is that he knows that you and many other people are not going to bother to read the details. You're not going to believe it because you like him more than you like me, so you will not allow your brain to penetrate all the details and see the truth of who is a good person and who is an evil person. So he just wants to keep you in that mode, and you know what? He's going to throw this bullshit at me that has already been proven false just so you're less likely to believe me. And that's the other thing. Y'all talk about me spiraling. Chris, that's one of the words you used in that conversation about me spiraling. And I've spiraled plenty. But this is not me spiraling. That's what you don't get, motherfuckers. Spiraling for me is what has happened in all the years and months when I didn't have anything to say publicly to all of you. When I was sitting here alone in my apartment, unable to get out of their tournaments, unable to live my life, and just screaming my head off and pissing off my neighbors and all that type of stuff. Every time that I've been able to create something, whether it be blog posts, whether it be videos, that actually make some progress in telling the story and get some views and get some readers, every time I've actually been able to get myself to a tournament, as I did in Budapest and Accra, and actually have interacted with people and further the story around, that is the opposite. I feel way, way better. I'm getting to a far, far better place. This is me escaping from the spiral because I now have some control. The thing that has made me so fucking angry, the reason I've spiraled, is because I've had no control over my own life. Because you have interfered with my right to play in these Scrabble tournaments. And I want to be clear, it's not a legal right, it's a divine right. I am a better player than most of you, and I am a better human being than most of you. And you can't keep me out of these tournaments without being immoral shitbags. And you are violating my divine right to play in these Scrabble tournaments when I am one of the best players in the world, and when I am a better human being than you immoral fuckbags. So, I rest my case.